Nicole, calling in from Armenia, says humanism can't fill the void former or present God belief systems can. Let's talk about it. Nicole, you are on the line with Forrest. Seth, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome, man. So why do you think that a God belief system, you said former or present, I don't know which particular God, why do you think that this God system is the best way to get to a moral stance or a moral standpoint that humanism can't reach?
Well, I wouldn't say it's like the best way, but I think I try to look outside my religion, which is Christianity. And I think what I saw was not like convincing that it can actually replace my current belief system. Because what I saw was like the world where you can't trust anyone, and it's just like people trying to improve it all the time, but keep failing.
Okay, so when you say trust anyone, do you mean like in terms of like finding scientific truth? Do you mean in terms of like being a good person? Like what do you really mean?
I mean, like trusting human beings because, well, like the laws, they get more and more complicated because people always find like the ways to trick each other, to kill each other, especially with what's going on right now in the world, like generally. And it's just like not convincing to me.
Right. Does any of that change under like a religious framework? Do religious people never cheat or lie or trick or hurt each other in ways that require new laws to be passed?
Well, even if a person is not a believer, like sincerely, but still can be, I don't know, like can wouldn't do bad things because they're convinced that they'll get punished for it. I think it's better than if this person will just be convinced that there's no one out there and I can do anything I want and I can profit and benefit, and like I can basically kill someone or rob someone. Nobody's going to find it out. I mean, in that way.
What if they're not convinced that they're going to go to hell for it, but they are convinced that those actions would cause undue harm to people and they've been taught to care about people, and so they don't do it because they care about people?
In that case, I think their community, if it's religious, is going to keep that person in line because, that system itself has already the rules, and they'll make sure that one...
I was just talking about a non-religious system. So a hypothetical, completely atheist society. So we have a society that has never even heard of a God before, but they are taught the same way that people are taught about God from early on. These people are taught about the value of human life and about the value of progress and about how the only reason we have everything we have today is because we work together and we care for each other and we take care of each other and we make sure that everybody's okay and that we provide for the people who need it the most. We all give whatever we can. We all take only what we need. They're raised with this kind of very basic moral system where they value human beings, they value each other. And so in that society, people are at least as moral, if not more moral, than in any secular society. Why is that not an acceptable framework for you?
Well, it sounds like utopia. It sounds like what communists were promising.
No, that's just morals. That's just basic moral teaching. Is telling kids, hey, you live in this society. This society functions because of everybody in it working together. We only get to progress when we all work together and take care of each other. Every bit of food that you have, your electricity, your water, your heat, your house, all these things come from other people working to benefit you. So you need to work to benefit them as well. If we are all killing each other, this thing doesn't work. So don't do that. Also, you know what it feels like to be sad. So don't make anybody else sad. That's just basic kindergarten morality. No, why could you not run a society based on that?
I do agree these are good things, but I don't think it's achievable.
Can we draw this back to evolution? And this is much more Forrest's territory. But pro-social behaviors being explainable evolutionarily, right? So if I was someone who was, I don't know, I was harming and killing and I was hoarding and I was doing all these other things, acting in antisocial, even destructive, murderous ways, etc., back in our earlier civilizations, the earlier incarnations of human beings, my chances of survival and passing on my genes were diminished, right? It actually benefited me to act in pro-social ways. So what benefits the other, then benefits the community, which comes back and benefits me. We're able to be safer. We procure more resources. We have a better quality of life. There are evolutionary reasons why we have an innate pro-social, most of us do anyway, pro-social tendency, because helping the species actually helps us all, which comes back. Whether or not there is true altruism, I'll let the other people debate that. But we don't have to look into religion, which honestly justifies a lot of atrocity and harm and murder and rape and misogyny and just bloodshed. We can see evolutionarily that communities, individuals and communities that acted in pro-social ways which reduced harm were the ones that survived and thrived. I mean, am I overstating that or misstating that, Forrest?
The what you're talking about there is called inclusive fitness, by the way. That's the term talked about evolutionarily when someone is being altruistic and somebody is taking care of other people, when somebody is doing something that doesn't directly benefit them, but does directly benefit their whole population or even one other thing in their population. And that other individual can then benefit others and others. And you have this kind of like ripple effect where the entire population is benefited, which means it returns back to you as well. That's called inclusive fitness. It is a thing in evolutionary biology. And it's one of the many reasons why we do see evolution of moral behavior throughout lots of species. We see moral behavior in a lot of different animals, including we see altruism, even self-sacrifice in things that don't even have brains, because it's good for the group, which means it's good for the overall passing on of genes. So there is an evolutionary advantage.
Isn't there even kind of a terrifying aspect to the idea that, well, I'm a Christian, the reason I don't murder is that the Bible tells me thou shalt not kill. It's kind of a terrifying reason not to murder. If a third, like an outside agency has to tell you don't murder people, that to me is a little bit scary.
Right. And that's exactly what we're talking about at the end of the call of Samar, is that you are a bad person on a leash. You're not a good person. Yeah. And so like for Nicole, what you're saying here, it sounds an awful lot like, you know, whether or not this religion is true, it's very useful at scaring people into behaving. Meanwhile, if you just teach people things and try to raise them as good people, then there's no guarantee that they'll be frightened enough to not, you know, to behave the way you want them to. And I think that's a crappy way of running a moral society, because at the end of the day, it's just whoever decides what they want their morality to look like that then preaches that to people. And tells them that they're going to go to hell if they don't agree with them. It's not actually a collective decision as what's good for the actual group.
So, but do you think that all the wars and everything going on right now is because of religion or because of just human like greediness and all that stuff?
You lost me at all. Go ahead, Forrest. Forgive me. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I was going to say, of course that is not true, and of course that's never true. There's never a time where all problems and all conflict directly relate to religion. A shitload do, and there's not a single thing that you can get from religion that you can't get without religion, and without. Or I shouldn't say that. There's not a single good thing that you can't get from without religion, without all the baggage that religion brings along with it. But no, wars and genocide and famine and all these things are going all around the world right now. They, of course, are related to just humans being assholes. But you can fix that if you teach humans how not to be assholes. You can also fix it by indoctrinating them with religion and saying you cannot do this because God says not to, until the next preacher comes along and says, God told me you have to do this. And then you have the Crusades. And then you have any other genocide you can think of that was religiously based. And then you have, even to the most benign, the prosperity preachers here in this country who say it doesn't matter if you're on food stamps and you're starving, send me your last $40 and you'll be blessed. There's any number of people who do very little evil things all the way up to full-scale genocide because their religion told them to and because they convinced other people that this God wants them to do that as well. So your religion, yes, it can be used to push morality. It can also be used to push horrible, evil, terrible shit. Meanwhile, secular morality doesn't really work that way. There have been evil atheists, but there has never been a war fought because of atheism. There has never been a genocide committed because we just have to prove there's no God. There have been no atheist crusades.
I also think that if we're going to talk about global conflicts, we can't ignore tribalism, tribalistic thinking. Yes. And what are religions, if not in grouping, right? There's us and there's them. And I'm not saying that tribes are exclusive to religion because they exist everywhere, but there are very many forms, some more benign than others. And so when we see the history of warfare, tribalistic warfare, we see us and them, the in-group, the out-group, me and the other. And I think that's that informs a lot of what you're talking about, much more than secularism or non-religious morality. So,
for sure. Nicole, we'll give you the last word and then we're going to move on. What do you think about the things that we said?
Well, I think, basically the only states that were, like, as you said, like atheist states, like the USSR and China, maybe right now, partly, they didn't show a great example of being a good society, I think.
All right, that's incorrect. I'm sorry, Forrest.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
This has been studied. I wrote about this in a book called Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian, where we looked at the religiosity of nations around the world, and it is the less religious countries, places like Japan, etc., that actually have a greater quality of life. They have less crime. They have less misery overall. There is a measuring stick called the World Peace Index. U.S. News and World Report and Statista, Pew, Gallup have done other studies looking at the religiosity of places around the world. If you want to see high crime, warlikeness, domestic violence, murder rate, theft, you want to see problems with society's infrastructures, be it healthcare, etc., you look at places that are highly religious, like the United States. And of course, all the Islamic nations, right? Those are the ones that struggle more with basic issues. Oh, there's my wife. So this idea that a secular nation is less moral is just wrong.
Yeah, I also want to just reiterate what I said a second ago. Like, none of these people, Stalin and Mao did not stand up on a platform and say, there is no God, so let's go kill some people. Like that wasn't what happened. They were evil assholes, and they acted like evil assholes. They used state religion. They used state control to go out and take over their people and to do horrible things. Fascism is not this thing that is just tied to religion or tied to atheism. I do think that especially like evangelical Christianity sets you up for fascistic thinking, but that's a completely different conversation for later. The point is, you can't point to China or to Russia and all these things and say, look, these bad people this atheist people did bad things, as if that's a representation of atheism. But what you can do is you can look at the Catholic Church and back in the Crusades and say, hey, look, here is an example of someone saying God will give you absolution if you kill as many Muslims as possible. That kind of shit did happen. So like, it's not really a direct comparison, nor is it a fair comparison at all.